Hello, everyone. My name is Carrie. I'm your host, and this is Truth Medicine. And Truth Medicine is a community where we explore the lessons, stories, and life changing moments that have brought women to heal by living their medicine of truth. And today we have a very special woman. Her name is Jillian. She's a holistic health professional and a certified functional nutritional therapy practitioner. Hi, Jillian.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So my first question is for those who don't know who you are, and this is probably the first time they're seeing you. Can you explain what it is you actually do?
Functional nutritional therapy practitioner sounds like a mouthful, but it's approaching nutrition from a holistic way, so that we're not just writing a diet plan or looking at someone as fitting into a box. Because I can explain later more, but I know that bioindividuality is really important for people when it comes to finding the best approach for health. Making sure that all the pieces fit together. So if it's there is a specific maybe type of diet we need to look at for some of the healing journey, but it's so much more than that, because holistically you need lifestyle changes, you need maybe some sort of spiritual approach to it, you need support in your life. And sometimes that support can come from me, but it can also just come from the awareness that you gather while working together with someone else. And again, it doesn't always have to be just diet focused, but that's the gist of what I do, is working with people to tune in to what's going on with their body and their mind. And a lot of times it becomes very therapy based in a way. I like that it's called nutritional therapy, because when I went into it, I thought it was kind of a weird term. I thought, well, therapy just sounds like it's very kind of clinical. And I thought this is very holistic, but the therapy part really started to make sense when I worked with more and more people one-on-one, because you do become almost like a therapist in some ways. People, if you resonate with someone, they trust you over time, or there's an energetic exchange that happens. And I found over time too, that the people who do work with me come to me through a sort of, I like to call it like a universal intervention. So it's not so much that people are told to see me. They may have found me through a referral, but we either resonate together or we don't. And I can tell from like the first little chat we might have, that's, could be a short little consult or something, free even. And I know exactly, kind of hearing it, feeling it. And I like to do video, Zoom, or at least, some kind of face-to-face, so that we get a feel for each other. And it's almost like something clicks or it doesn't, and that's when I know that I'm living my purpose, by helping people that are ready to be healing and to do it kind of in this format. So hopefully that wasn't too much of a long-winded answer.
No, it's great. Yeah, it's very informative. Therapy is like healing on an emotional, spiritual, and physical level. Like they're all working in synergy, so you can't do one without the other. So
Right.
it's very beautiful what you're doing. And I heard you say bio-individuality.
Yes.
What does that mean to you?
Well, to me, that means that there's no one size fits all approach. So I do have people come and ask me, what do you think about veganism? Or what do you think about paleo or keto, or, all these different approaches? And my first answer is always, I have no dogma around what you choose to eat. So bio-individuality means that you might do really well on a vegan diet. The next person might not do as well based on their constitution, what happens in their body. And sometimes it's, ethical and moral. So if someone comes to me and they are very against eating animals, let's say, I'm not going to tell them that they can't be healthy, because that's just silly. I can figure out, working with anyone, that there are ways to approach it from a very practical sense, but also, you have to meet someone where they're at, because it can't just be a one size fits all approach. That's why our healthcare industry, quote unquote, sick care, whatever you want to call it, is what it is now, because we have so many kind of marketing schemes and dogmas that really divide people, and instead of having us all come together to heal and work together, it's very divisive. And so bioindividuality is very that means you are you, I am me, and we can figure out how to be healthy.
Yeah, I know. It just makes me think of like all the people who are super vegan, they think everyone else should be vegan or, vice versa. And it's just like, I always say, it's like, yeah, just because, that works for you doesn't mean it's going to work for me. And I think that there's such power in really like knowing. I mean, even different blood types you can eat for your blood type. I mean, there's that too,
Yeah,
but just
yeah.
intuitively eating, right? Like knowing what works for your body, knowing how you when you eat something and how you feel after, like if you can really tune into that part, I think we would be way more healthier if we were teaching people how to really tune in to their
Yes.
bodies.
Yes. And that's where that spiritual component sometimes comes in, or that it doesn't even have to be spiritual. I think that word can turn people off. And, there's,
Mhm.
I understand that, but I think it has to be more about coming back to your self awareness.
Mm.
And that can play a huge role in all kinds of healing too. And I always like to give this disclaimer to people too when I speak about diet types. I was a vegan, I was a vegetarian, I was a pescatarian. Like I literally have tried all of it. So there's none of it that I feel is bad. It's just maybe not optimal for you now, or could be better. Could be better choices based on what you're trying to do with your health.
Mhm. Yeah, and
So
there's different seasons, like you can eat for the season, your body's always changing and cycling, so, you have to adjust accordingly.
exactly.
So it's really exciting what you do in the world. And I'm always curious. This is what this whole show is about is discovering how people got to their truth and their individual truth and how they got to do what they're doing in the world. I'm fascinated how people can be so confident in what they do because one of my biggest struggles have been what do I really want to do? So that's why I created this thing because I want to interview. And I'm sure a lot of people, other people that are wanting to do something in the world probably feel the same.
Hmm.
So, how did you get here?
Well, it is definitely a journey for me. And it's funny because when I talk to people about my current career, it is a career that I have, even though sometimes it doesn't feel like it because I'm doing something that I'm passionate about. But I did start off as a Bachelor of Fine Art degree holder, that I did graphic design and all this stuff through college, and came out and just really was not feeling like I was in line with what I should be doing as like a dharma, and my life's work. So I started getting into the health field just because I had my own health struggles since I was a tiny kid. Probably around 6 years old, I now remember being, that young when it began. So I had a lot of health concerns, mostly digestive, but I remember being in a ball on the bed, when I was that tiny, and like cramping and gassy and just feeling so bad all the time. And of course, my mom did everything she could to help me feel good, but she didn't know what was going on. And we just kind of brushed it along under the rug. And then as I got older, it got worse. I started having a lot of things go on in my teens, which, I mean, when we're teenagers, we have a lot of things happening. But I had severe depression. I had anorexia, bulimia. I had cystic acne. I had the digestive issues. It was all over the place. And, I went to doctors and they said, okay, you have an ulcer, you have a hernia, you have gastritis, you have H. pylori, all these things. And looking back now, I'm like, now I understand why. But then I just didn't know why. So the doctors treated me with antibiotics and prescription medications and, anti-anxiety and antidepressant medications. And I was on all kinds of stuff. And it was, to me at the time, I just thought, why can't I feel good? And I was really unhappy with my life. And, it just progressed where I kept kind of dealing with it. And all into my 20s, continuously had more things pop up. I went to every doctor, like, that you would normally go to, any specialists, had lots of doctors say, pretty much every doctor was like, you're fine. It's in your head. Literally was saying it's in my head. You need antidepressant medication. And they did like, endoscopies, colonoscopies, and everything looks great. I'm like, well, okay, this is not normal. So eventually got to the point where I was just fed up, and I got, the universe delivered to me a connection to someone who was more of a holistic healthcare practitioner when I was about 25. And I was blessed to learn more about nutrition and to actually experience acupuncture as part of my healing journey, which was wonderful. But also it just opened my eyes to the world of holistic healing. It didn't fix everything right away, but it helped me get on the path to where I found that I was passionate about this in my own health journey. Then I started to work on my health and realized that I really wanted to help heal others. I think it's partly in my genetics or something, because my grandma was a nurse. We have other nurses in my family. It's like my mom was very, motherly healing kind of person. She still is. And I just picked up that kind of passion for this work. So eventually, went back to school, got my certification, started working with people one-on-one, and it's just grown since then, because like when you have that passion and when you start working with people and they notice that you care and they see that you're there more than just to prescribe them a diet, but you're there to actually lead them through a healing journey and educate them along the way, that, if you are passionate about it, it's, you don't think of anything else anymore. And so that's where I am now. It's really what I want to continue to do the rest of my life. And it changes every day, where I have different experiences with people. I learn more. I continue to heal myself, because I'm not perfect. I have imposter syndrome to some degree still, where I feel like, like you were saying before, people, how do they get where they are? Or it feels like you're not ready, or you're not sure where to go and what to do with your life. But yeah, I think if we start just really following our intuition and go back to what brings us the most joy, like in our body and our spirit, and we are going to then follow the path that was meant for us. But we have to stay focused on that, what is meant for us.
I really want to go into the imposter syndrome, but first I want to back up just a little bit to your diagnosis of the digestive disorders. You had anorexia. So walk me through that time in your life when you were probably, I don't know what you were feeling. You can share with us what you're feeling, and how did you heal yourself from all that? Because I'm sure people watching are probably like, yeah, I'm struggling with the same disorders and would like some help or guidance, and maybe they resonate with you and you could guide them.
Sure. And I mean, I always want to say, I'm not a healthcare, a psychiatric practitioner. I mean, there's plenty of work to be done in, that realm when it comes to helping someone heal. And it's interesting though, I never did get that kind of help along my own journey. I never sought that out or dealt with that with a professional. I think what helped me the most was my spirituality. I really did go lean on that pretty heavily, and that really brought me through those difficult times, because at the time I can remember being that person, and I look back and I wish I could give her a hug and say like, you're beautiful, it's fine. Because all I did was criticize my body. That was what I focused on. Like I was always, I need to be skinnier. I am not perfect enough. I have cellulite, I have blemishes. I have too much weight or something, all these things that were judging myself based on everyone else's opinions. And no one was even like necessarily telling me I looked bad. It was more, I mean, I think people can relate to some degree that when we grow up, kids can be really cruel and we can have some things said to us that we don't want to hear, that stick with us through our lifetime. But I was blessed to have wonderful parents and a lot of support. But I just beat myself up a lot. And so once I released this attachment, and it's not completely gone. Don't get me wrong. I love to be fit and take care of my body, and I want to look good. Yes, I have some, concern over that. But when I catch myself falling back into that self-judgment, and that kind of anxiety around my physical body, when I just get quiet and remember that, first of all, life is so short, and we get so stuck in judgment of things that are continuously changing, decaying, not to sound terrible, but we are never going to stay young forever. And our body is just a vehicle for us to be in this, incarnation on the planet. And if we can continue to come back to our purpose, and sometimes for a lot of people, that is kind of related to your spirituality, or it can be, and for me it is, then I realize that I'm here not for a selfish reason. And I think when we overly focus, on our appearance, for instance, it's a selfish motive, right? It's ego. And so that ego is what really prevents us from stepping into our power or our karma or dharma, I should say, and doing the work that we are meant to do here. So, and, I hate to skirt around the, how did I get out of what I was in, but it's really like healing is not linear. And I tell people that all the time now, that you're going to jump around, you're going to have ups and downs, you're going to have, struggles. But again, my biggest truth right now, at least that I'm feeling, is that my struggles I'm grateful for, because they really have been something that is the catalyst to me being able to heal and help others heal in turn. So it's not selfish. It's, let me see how I can provide the same kind of support and healing to others that I deserve and that I've been giving myself as well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, absolutely. So you said that you used your spirituality to help heal you.
mm-hmm.
Can you share with us something specific that you have in mind, that, like, because when I think of like these disorders, these are deep, and to generalize and say it's spirituality, like I'm sure you had certain routines or something you did. And I also struggled with self-image, still do. And I think it's just a thing, like you said, healing's not linear. Like you keep coming, like I'll feel confident and I'll feel like good in my body. And then, the next week I'm like, oh my gosh, and I think that's just being part, like a woman, going through the cycles.
Yes.
Like we're all, going through different waves in our lives. And I think it's, if we can really accept where we are, then that's when we can begin to love parts of ourselves, and change will happen. So yeah, I know I went on a little tangent, but
no, it's good.
I would love for you to share any routines you did, like with your spirituality, or something that could really enlighten people that are struggling with similar things.
Sure. And it's, my spirituality has been like something that I felt very strong connection to as a child. And I think what happened, and this may have happened to other people too, I feel like sometimes we go through cycles of our spirituality too, where we're attached to it, or we feel connected and we feel tuned in. And then all of a sudden things happen, life gets crazy, we get stressed, all these things. We lose that connection to even just the simplest part of our day that could be just taking a few moments of silence or breath work in the morning. Now I definitely make time for these things that I know are going to center me and keep me in that mode of healing, and also staying on the path to helping others. So it could be as simple as journaling. That was huge for me, just journaling nonsense. Honestly, it wasn't like I was journaling, sometimes it was to get things out, but most of the time it was reminding myself that I am perfect just as I am, that I don't need to pretend that I'm going to be X, Y, or Z for someone else, and that I can love all the quote unquote mistakes I've made, or I can love all the little flaws that actually are part of who I am, and to love myself. And it's not looking in the mirror every day and faking saying, I love you, you're perfect, because we're not always going to do that. And it doesn't actually, to me, make sense to lie to yourself when you don't feel like that about yourself. But I think it's good to remember that there is divinity in everyone, literally. And I don't think that, I know that applies to everyone. Now, how much you want to own it is something you have to decide. And what I mean by owning it is looking past the fears that you have about yourself, the fears that you have about what might or might not happen in the future, because it's almost like thinking of things as a dream. And the dream is, what you decide this life to be. And it doesn't have to be the dream of living this, lavish lifestyle with, all of the material possessions, but instead realizing that, all of this that we are in right now is energetic. And if we can come back into our own energy, that is our own power, that is our divinity, and we can continue to tap into that anytime we want. And literally just sitting still in the morning for 5 minutes could be your or anyone else out there's path to finding their own divinity and just tapping into it. So for me, that's been huge, stillness, a little bit of breath work, and I don't even mean like Wim Hof breathing, because I'm not saying that's bad for people, but it's just not practical for a lot of people. But if you can come back to that state of presence of mind, sometimes, and this is just I just throw things out as they come into my brain as to what I've done, but the more vulnerable you can be with someone, especially finding someone you trust, and it doesn't have to be your parent, it doesn't have to be your best friend. It could be like a random person that you connect with, that you decide to have a vulnerable moment with. That can really open up your spirit to being more in tune, and also like forgiving yourself, loving yourself, so don't put the wall up. I used to have a wall up, a big protective wall that was like, I don't want anyone else in here because I don't want them to take my energy, and I don't want to feel like they're in my world too much, because that would be making me feel unsafe. But the more I can feel safe in my body and in my spirit, the more I'm going to allow myself to kind of move past some of these barriers, these blockades, So maybe that is finding someone you can talk to in a professional level, and that can help to kind of open doors. It could be, again, spiritual mentorship. It could be your neighbor, who's, as I go through my own spiritual journey, I realize that we are all one, that we really are all one. And it sounds so woo-woo to a lot of people to say that, and I'm not trying to spiritually bypass. It literally is the truth. We are all energy. We're all sitting here swirling around in lots of energy, and we have to be able to come back to the fact that life is so short. We can't hold on to the BS anymore. And if we want to be here for a purpose and not just live kind of half-assed, and then at the end of our life, look back and be upset with ourselves, we have to be able to, let go of all these quote unquote flaws and realize that we are a piece of divinity. And that's really my truth as well.
Yeah. And for those of you listening that may be going through similar stuff, I believe the key to get through things is to find a support system. So if that is a friend or somebody that you can confide in and trust, really reach out to them. Or if you can always reach out to me too. If you're struggling, I have a lot of resources and I would love to refer you to somebody. So, I feel like you're a really strong individual, and for you to just take all the power within and heal yourself from all these things, I mean, it's extraordinary. And I know a lot of other people probably don't have that same strength. Can you take us through a time when you thought that maybe you weren't going to make it through?
Yeah, well, I mean, there have been ups and downs since my teens, let's say. Like the teens are kind of when I felt like a lot of things were kind of hitting the fan, to so to speak. And I'm very open. I'm an open book. So like anyone that talks to me or asks me questions, I have no shame over what I've been through. So, I did touch on some of my struggles, right? And when I share that, it's definitely not to have any sort of sympathy, because I actually am very happy that I've had everything I've gone through, because again, I would not be here now doing things that are actually helping others if I didn't go through them. But I also remember probably one of the times I felt at the lowest was, I was very suicidal when I was about 17, and not knowing how to make it through that. Again, I think we make it through because something helps us. Like there's either a person or a spirit guide or our own intuition, whatever it is that you feel like it's going to be what you can tap into at that time, use it. Don't feel like you are burdening someone. Don't feel like you're, not worthy of it, because you are. You would not have chosen to come here in this life if you weren't supposed to be here. So as someone who has been through a very suicidal time, and it was not, it was very, very, very dark, I look back and all I can think of is the small tools that my mother actually helped me with and gifted me at the time. And, I guess sharing one of the tools for me at the time was actually, when you have some of these dark thoughts, this is very simple, but it can be so transformative, I think, for people, and cathartic. So let's say you have a terrible vision that you're having in dreams all the time. Some people have really bad dreams. Or if you have all these racing thoughts and they're very dark, write them down or draw the vision that you're having and tear it up. Literally just, and I know it sounds almost like burning things in a ceremony, you're releasing it. I remember the one thing that really broke me through from a very dark period was my mother sitting me down on her bed and saying, I was telling her some of the things I was feeling, and she had me draw it on a paper, a little scrap paper. And she said, tear it up, release it. You don't need that anymore. It's gone. And to me, I look back and it sounds silly. I mean, it doesn't sound silly. You may resonate with this too, but looking back, I feel like my mother was more of a spiritual guide than I ever realized. In her own power. She is transformative in her own power. And her own journey was, I didn't even know back then. And she shared it with me since. But the more we can open up to each other about the terrible stuff we're going through and just be vulnerable, I mean, magic happens, honestly, like real life magic happens. So, I think that could be really helpful to someone to hear that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And your mom, geez, like that's so, I mean, I know there are mothers out there like that, but it's very rare that you hear a mother like truly can guide their child in that way unless they're really evolved or aware. So, mom, you're awesome.
She's an old soul. She's an old soul. And I didn't know that growing up, but now I realize, yeah. And we're, like I said, we all have blessings. And I don't mean to say that other people should hear this and think, I don't want them to think, well, I don't have that, because I guarantee you have something, or you have someone, or you have yourself. And like you said before, people can reach out to you, Carrie. Like you are a resource, a tool, and also a healer. And so we all have, like nowadays more than ever, we have the resources right at our fingertips through audio, video, digital, online. So it's right there. But sometimes we are just so signed out from the possibility that we even deserve the healing. And the more we can decide that we do deserve it and actually be open to receiving, that's where I think things start to really take a turn and be that, that transformative part in our journey.
Yeah. And if you guys resonate with Jillian, reach out to her. I meant to say that. So yeah, she's a great resource. I read this quote by you. It said, "The greatest measure of awareness is the ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn." Can you share with us a time what you learned and then you had to unlearn?
Yeah.
You were programmed and then you had to reprogram yourself.
Yeah. Well, definitely, I could take that in a multitude of ways, as far as like, there's so much that I've definitely learned and had to unlearn and relearn. But I'd say recently, the reason I'm bringing this particular thing up is because of my own healing journey and how it's been able now to have me help others. And that is what I was speaking to before about nutrition. So nutrition, yes, it's important. Okay. Like that. Yes. We shouldn't eat garbage and processed food and all that all the time if we want to have vitality. But also there's, epigenetics, which, some people don't know. It basically just means there are factors and triggers in your life that are going to turn on or off your genes. So you may have a gene, or I may have a gene for breast cancer. That doesn't mean we're going to get breast cancer. The epigenetics part is what can help or hurt that factor. So the learning, unlearning, and relearning is, I had to come out of school saying, I had to first kind of apply what I learned, with myself and with my clients. And over time, I thought there's just a missing piece, like things were not always connecting. Some people did pretty well, but I just felt like I wasn't, getting through to them all the way. And the more I came into this one-on-one time with people with an understanding that they needed more than just dietary advice or dietary input, I had to kind of unlearn what I thought was correct for everyone. And so, relearning things means expanding my own awareness in the health field, expanding my awareness around my own healing journey. Like saying before, it's not linear. I had to stop being so rigid in my own approach to things and going, okay, for instance, and this is again, not to bash veganism at all. I have family that's vegans, friends that are vegans, and I think it's beautiful if that's what's working for them. But for me, I was very dogmatic about it when I was a vegan, and I was very strict on myself and restrictive, and it wasn't even really moral and ethical. It was more like I was taught that this was the way I had to be in order to be better and heal. But when I finally allowed myself to open up to the fact that maybe that wasn't resonating with my body and my spirit anymore, and gave myself grace, which is one of my favorite words to use, especially with people that I work with. Give yourself grace. And then what I mean by that is, first of all, forgive yourself for things that you didn't know better about, or what you did maybe wasn't the best, but that's okay. Let's move forward. Also grace to know that you deserve what you want when it comes to healing. You're not stuck. You don't, have to live this certain way your whole life. And it's okay to continue to evolve and change and learn. And so I guess, full circle now, I know I'm still unlearning and relearning things, but if we don't continue to open up to new possibilities and educate ourselves and then educate others, we are going to stick in this, again, like a dogmatic view of things. Mm-hmm. And I think that really plays well nowadays with the state of the world. It's so easy to put up, a point of view online or an Instagram or something and say, this is what it is. And then really start to basically have negativity and hatred toward other people who aren't in your own space. And that to me is a sign of ignorance or lack of intelligence, as harsh as that sounds. If we can't be okay with the fact that maybe what we thought we knew, we didn't know, and then be able to release attachment to that and have that non-attachment, to an outcome, and just be along for the learning and the ride and the journey together as a whole, as a population, as a world. That to me is just a sign of progress and awareness to be able to do that learning and unlearning and relearning. So,
yeah, that's great, Jillian. Yeah, everything changes. We grow, our views change, and we evolve. So naturally, and I think part of evolution is truly looking at what you believed, your whole paradigm around what was your beliefs, and being open to the possibility of that can change and that wasn't true.
Yeah. Yeah. It's okay to say you're wrong.
Totally. Yeah. And I think so many people get attached to their ego of how they want things to be. They get super rigid in it. I mean, it's interesting because even family members sometimes, I go long periods without seeing them. And then I see them after 5 years and it feels like they're still in the same mindset. And I'm like, wow, this is so crazy. And when I try to, just offer different views or anything, they're so stuck to that same paradigm. And I'm just like, wow, this is so fascinating. And I'm like, and then it makes me question, I'm like, what really opened somebody up to change,
Yeah, I think sometimes it has to be dramatic. Things have to happen sometimes to people, shake them out of their, whether it's, and this is not to say I wish this for someone, but honestly, a lot of times transformation happens because of that, compression on someone or that restriction, and they feel stuck, right? They feel anxious almost about it. And I think, you can apply it to, like you were saying before, people being rigid or stuck in something like politics, religion, health, food, all these things we get in these camps. And a lot of it, I think, is because we want to have, even back to our kind of primal instinct, we want to have a tribe, that's our tribe. That's my people. And I feel safe because I have these people to support me and back me up in my beliefs. But unfortunately, that's not showing any signs of growth because you're not learning more and more and more. It's funny because I have literally gone the gamut, like I said before, about my diet, just regular nutrition stuff. It's been all over the place since I was a teenager. And now I still have changes. So every time I go to a family function or a holiday event, for family, and we all are talking, it's almost like I'll be on a totally different sort of plan for myself, for my health. And they're like, wait, so you're not a vegan anymore? Oh, wait, so you're not eating? Okay, what? They're so confused. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just doing this different now. And I feel so much better. And they're like, okay. Or they'll see me feeling better. And they're like, what are you doing now, Jillian?
Yeah.
But it's because I'm willing to continue to shift. You have to be willing to go with the flow, really. I mean, so.
Yeah, totally. I've never been hardcore vegan, but I was vegetarian for a while and I would eat chicken every now and then. But for many years, I wasn't eating hardly any meat. And like, that's how my family started identifying me as that I don't eat meat anymore. And then the next time they saw me, it's like, yeah, I was eating chicken and beef, organic, all the good quality.
Well, and that's part of the struggle, is that what you said before really stuck out. The word identify, they identified you.
Yep, totally.
Your identity, or our identity as people, gets determined by silly stuff like food that we ingest,
Yeah, yeah.
or the clothes we decide to wear, or the hair color we chose, or whatever. And that's where I think a lot of actually, my own health transformation happened when I released identifying with certain things. Like, I do this, I don't do this, I am this, I am not this. Instead of saying I am this or that, it's just a part of the way you're expressing yourself right now in this incarnation, in this body. And it's not about long term, being right or wrong. It's like literally, okay, this is what you choose right now. And being okay with saying, I'm not doing that anymore. And I don't need to feel judged.
Yeah, you can change. Anyone can change at any moment, and you're not bound to what you were yesterday or even 10 seconds ago. So, change is the only thing that is guaranteed in this world.
Exactly. And we have to stop apologizing for it too.
Yeah.
That's another thing I found, especially women. We love to apologize for things, and we like to make these, like, I don't know. And I hate to say that about, I'm sure somebody would bash me for over generalizing women this way. But regardless, I've seen it, I would say, in more people than not that are women, always sort of apologizing or always sort of making excuses for things because they're worried about judgment, or they're worried about, being accepted or loved. And that lack of love can also be a huge part of our trauma growing up. I can say for myself, I definitely dealt with some trauma that, made me feel less than, made me feel like I needed to do something to prove my worth always. And that really bled into how I fed my body, my sexual habits, my lack of taking care of myself, generally speaking, in a lot of ways, or doing things that were just detrimental, almost, on purpose, but, not really being knowledgeable that that's what I was doing at the time. But it was very much like punishing myself all the time in some way. And I think that's another thing people fall into so easily is, self-deprecation in a way, and whether it's physical, mental, emotional. And we have to get past that, because if you can't let that go and stop doing that to yourself, you're not going to heal,
Yeah. And I hate to say this, but it's so common and normal that we have such low self-worth and self-esteem. Like, I'm in my 30s and I'm still struggling with it. And, I think one of my I've been really looking at this lately within myself is I don't feel good enough. Like, and I've felt that theme, that undertone my whole life. And I'm really looking at, like, okay, where did it come from? And how the hell do I get over that? Because there is always that voice in the back of my head, like, oh, I'm not good enough to do this, or I can't do that, But I think those things are what really, like, drive us to do what we do, right? So I
Yes.
think being aware of it, and then just loving that part of yourself. And when I say love, I mean, I really believe you have to accept that you feel that way about yourself, and then be with it, and know that it's okay to feel that way, and it's okay to maybe not even love it. It's a progression, right? You gotta, it's a process. You gotta
Yes.
take your time with working your way to loving those parts of yourself. And, I'm still in that process of, like, my mind's like, yeah, you are good enough. I can intellectualize it, but then, the deeper feeling is like, is that lightning?
Lightning, sorry, jumped. I was like,
Yeah.
oh,
I was like,
you just said
whoa.
something very impactful, apparently, because
Yeah,
someone needs to hear what you just said.
I forget what I was saying now. The deeper feeling is, you know, what is like going on. And, it just takes time. It just takes time. And we got to be
You said,
tender and
yeah,
gentle with ourselves, and, start doing things that make you feel good. So that's what
yeah.
I'm really looking at. And I wasn't really aware of how dominant the I don't feel good enough is,
Mhm.
So just I'm processing that out of my system, or maybe
Mhm.
just integrating it in and loving that part of myself. So,
That's exactly, I love that you said all that because there were so many nuggets that you just said that just had my mind all over. But one of the things I think people need to hear is that you may not love the things that you criticize yourself for, mentally, if it's self-judgment around the looks or the lack of faith in what you're doing, that you should be doing it,
mm,
or that you have enough, knowledge that you need or healing, whatever it is that you're trying to do in life. Instead of always saying that I have to love it, definitely acknowledging it and sitting with it even, and that's painful and hard, but the more you can say that it's part of my journey is something that will actually give you power to work through it.
mm,
And it can be that there's one thing that you just can't stop doing, and it's not, it's not good for you, whether it's, drinking soda or even like something more difficult. It could be, a habit, a ritual that just is not serving you in your life. But instead of continuing to just be upset at yourself for it, look at it, kind of stand away from it, step back from it and look at it and say,
mhm,
that's part of me. Like that's part of my being right now. And I don't
mhm,
have to love it, but I also don't, if you disconnect from it, disassociation from it is only going to magnify it in so many ways and actually continue to have it kind of permeate. The more you can kind of send it that, like, I see you, I'm not happy about that.
mhm.
I'm not stoked about this part of me, but I also know that I have all this to offer into the world, and I can continue to use that in some way to be more maybe self-aware, to be more humble, if you think about it. So if your ego
Mhm,
is like very getting in the way for that, you can just say that's a flaw and I don't like it, but it
mhm.
also means I'm not perfect and that's okay. I'm human and I get to continue to be a human that is here, living, helping others, dealing with my own BS, and not pretending to be perfect and put on these filters every day that I show other people and I won't actually show up as who I am. The more you
Mhm.
show up as who you are, the more you will actually receive that love that you need, that support that you need from the right sources. You know what I mean? Instead
Mhm.
of the fake sources that are out there just making you feel like less than.
Yeah, yep. And until you identify what it actually is, you keep attracting from that point. You attract circumstances that just keep validating the dominant feeling. So,
Yes, you're so
y-
right about that.
yeah. So I think, if someone's watching this and you're wanting to know, like, what is my deeper fear? What is my dominant feeling that I don't feel good about myself? I encourage you to, or maybe you have advice. I would say write down all, just like free write for like 5 minutes, whatever comes to your mind of your worst fears. And
Mm-hmm.
then you can scale it, which one like has that charge in your body the most, and just scale from like 1 to 10 or however many you wrote, and which one has the most charge is probably going to be your most dominant reoccurring feeling, and that's probably what you're attracting from. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe you can add to that a little bit.
I love that you said, free writing, and I'll even encourage people to, when you do that, a lot of times I feel like there's something to be said for timing these things too, because, and
Mhm.
I mean that from my own perspective as well, because I know certain times of the day I'm more open, right? Like, and for me, it's early morning. And that's why I make that happen. First thing is either it's some breath work. It could be just a little bit of a yoga flow movement. It could just be sitting quietly to myself. It could be free writing, all those things, or being outside in nature for a few minutes. Those things, just bringing yourself back to this awareness of the self, and not, and these are really just kind of practical tips, but like, don't go on your phone right away. Don't open up Instagram and Facebook and whatever and just be on there, because you're immediately sucked in the morning. You're actually the most receptive typically, because you just
Mhm.
woke up. Your body is in that state that's sort of ready to either take on good or take on bad. And if you take on the bad first thing, you're not going to have a lot of kind of power to overcome the rest of what's coming at you the rest of the day. At least that's how I feel. I feel like I'm more in my power in the morning, so I can really kind of hone in on what's going on with me. And so I think it's important to just give yourself a few minutes. And a lot of people don't do that because they say, oh, I have kids and I have a job and I have this and that. And I feel like that's a cop out. I mean, I'm going to put it out there. Tough love it's a cop out, and we have to make a little bit of a time frame if we're actually committed to growth and committed to our own kind of expansion in this world, so that we're not stuck and doing the same thing every day, all day, and in the, hamster wheel. And so, the more you can come back to it. And like I said, the breath can be so powerful, to bring that awareness, to bring healing, to bring energy into your cells from a physical perspective, to bring yourself into the present moment. Because right now, I think I've heard this saying about, if you're living in the past, typically is like depression in a way. If you're living in the future, it's like you have anxiety. But if you just live in the moment now, and you can literally bring yourself into that with the breath, that can be one of the most effective healing tools ever, and I know that for sure. So that to me is always kind of where to start when you're trying to become more aware of yourself and what you need.
Yeah, if somebody really wants to change, they're going to do whatever they need to do. They're not going to come up with the excuses, oh, I have kids or I have a job, because you'll set out that time. So if someone really wants change, they'll make that happen at all cost. Now I want to move into, I remember first talking to you and you were saying how you had like this whole spiritual transition or transformation, and you and your partner, your husband, broke up, and then you guys got back together after you transformed. Would you like to share on that?
Sure. It's actually interesting because I feel like my spirituality was very strong as a child. And then I sort of lost touch with it as I went through my teenage and 20 something years. I'm 38 now, almost 39. And when I got married, I still felt like, I think at that point, I was not as in touch with my spirituality. I was sort of disconnected, feeling like, I was very still stuck in my head and feeling very cerebral about things versus feeling into what my spirit needed. And I actually, and it had nothing, when we split up, it had really nothing to do with him. And I told him, obviously it was painful for him, but it was not something that he did. It was literally me finding that I felt out of control of myself and my life, and my spirit really just felt like it was being suffocated. And I knew it had to do with my own need to break out of something that was really holding me back. And part of that journey that really opened me back up to my spirituality was I went through yoga teacher training. And I didn't do that to go into teaching yoga. I actually did it because I felt called to having that process. And I knew it was going to be something to kind of get me into a new form of healing for myself. And so it really did help me with that breath work, the awareness of my body, but not awareness of my body in a critical way. It was like this awareness of my body in a appreciative, loving. I was healthier feeling than ever going through all that. And I was doing things so differently than what I was used to, but it also really cracked me open in a way. And when I separated, it was hard. It was just very difficult to be alone, to change everything almost overnight about the way I was living my life. But it really also made me very aware of how petty we can be about silly stuff, that we feel like judgy, and we feel like someone else is responsible for our happiness. That's actually what I was probably doing at the time, was kind of putting my own happiness in someone else's hands. And I looked back also and saw all these traumas from my childhood that had also bled into this. And I started really dealing with that and becoming aware. It's not that I went to a therapist and started not to say that that's bad, but I didn't go to someone else just to have them help me deal with my BS. It was more like I realized I had to start doing the work, and I had to start actually caring about where I was mentally and emotionally and spiritually. And the more I got into that, the more I realized, again, that no one else is responsible for my happiness but me, like no one. And I get to choose really to be that person that's living a life of gratitude, living a life of service, living a life in line with my purpose. And the more I, realize that over time, and, there are lots of ways to get to that. There's, you could go to a therapist or a mentor of some kind and do that, kind of work. You can also do it through reading. You can do it through journaling. You can do it through yoga and breath work. There's no one way to get to this, but you've got to decide that it's important to you to make the changes in your life that you need to make to become self-aware and also to continue to grow versus being stagnant. And when that happened for me, when I was separated from him, it woke me up to how, first of all, that I was very judgmental of him for nothing, like that he wasn't doing enough for me to feel good, and putting it all on him as to why I wasn't happy, which was a total crock of,
Yeah.
I mean, it had nothing to do with him. So coming back together, it was because we both realized the importance of partnership and the importance of individuality too in a partnership, so.
That's a hard truth to face, and then also follow through with okay, I know I need to get to my center and my truth and find out who I am, what I'm doing here, and what really makes me happy. How did you maintain all that in that time?
Oh, it's such a blur. I have to be honest with you. Like that whole time period, it was about a year that we were separated. And,
wow.
We maintained communication, which really helped. It wasn't like we just stopped talking and shut each other out of our lives. But we both had to kind of those come to Jesus moments with ourselves, where we were like, hey, wow, first of all, I was being a lot less grateful for what I have, right? And and I'm not here to say that if someone has a partner or husband or wife and they should just, break it off for a while and come back and everything will be fine, because that's not true for everyone.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're not meant to be with someone necessarily anymore. Maybe you've outgrown each other, but if you haven't come to this point where there's been this traumatic thing happen between you and you can step away before that happens, if that makes sense, and kind of before the crap hits the fan, just to say, okay, I'm going to step back. I'm going to take a time out in a way. And it's not a fun one, and it's going to hurt real bad. And we're going to have a lot of hard times through it. But giving space to the other person and knowing that the space is not out of a place of judgment and anger and, punishment. It's about giving the other person and yourself the acknowledgement that you both deserve to be happy. Literally, that's a huge part of it. You deserve happiness and they deserve happiness. And if you're not providing the kind of support they need, or they're not supporting you in the way you need, you have to actually be able to communicate that, but not put it on them. You have to be able to own your own thing, make sure that you are the one that's taking responsibility for your happiness.
First, I just want to say I'm proud of you, and it's so courageous to actually be brave enough to take that step, to be okay, I have to find myself. And you didn't know if you guys were going to get back together or not. Mm-mm. So when you guys got back together, how did that come about?
It was pretty organic. And we definitely had a lot of ups and downs though throughout the separation, where we were I guess you could say in a way, I'm a very intuitive person. I don't mean in the psychic realm. I mean intuition wise for myself. I can feel what's happening. And I had to give him the credit, that he was doing his own work without me to tell him to do it. Because in a way, I've always been a kind of a motherly person, and I've always wanted to control everything, super controlling for a long time in my life. And also that was a lesson in releasing control, because I can't control other people and I cannot control even my husband. We have to say that loved one deserves that credit, of saying you have responsibility and you are your own person and your own spiritual person. And I want you to be happy. And if this means, for now that we're not together, we can come back together. If we continue to keep communication open, that's crucial. And then at the end, when we just kind of looked at it and said, we realized that when we were coming back together, the triggers that were there before, or the things that used to be seemingly insurmountable when it came to like little things that happen between us, friction, when that started to dissolve very easily, or dissolve with less, pressure from the other person, then it was very obvious to us that we had done the right amount of work and we had the right amount of respect for each other. And, it's never going to be perfect. We've had plenty of little things since we moved back in together, and that we're, but we are so different as people, and so much more, I guess you could say, appreciative of each other. A lot of times that can kind of bring that appreciation back out, I think, when you have that little bit of a separation period. And again, it's not telling people they should separate, but if you are finding yourself in a place where you're always giving up your own power, your happiness, and your will to live, basically, based on someone else's presence in your life, that's a big sign. That's like, maybe we need to like take a different perspective on this right now. And that could be therapy. It could be separation, and it could be eventually no longer being together in the long run, if that's what that, if that's the way it should be. So, that's not the same for everyone. So I always hate to try to tell people like, this is how you do it, because that's definitely not.
Yeah, totally. I think it's different for every person. What was the biggest thing you learned in your time apart about yourself?
That I have 100% responsibility and power for my own happiness and fulfillment. Literally, even when I feel like crap, or even when I have a bad day, like I'm never going to go now and think that someone else, even, no matter who they are, in this case, speaking about my husband, he is not the one that is responsible. Now, the one thing, you do, in my opinion, need is someone that you can lean on, or you can be vulnerable with. And honestly, that's another part of what helped, I think, us be as close as we are now, is my ability to be vulnerable. Because even with him, the first part of our marriage, I still had that wall of like, I have to defend. I can't be too open because I might be betrayed, or I might be hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that safety, and actually that's one of the things, this is very vulnerable, honestly, for me to share. But like, one of the things I said to him when I left was, I don't feel safe. And not safe physically, not say it was never abusive or anything. It's more safe, like that I can be predictably like, okay, if that makes sense, on a day-to-day basis, and not expecting that he is responsible for my happiness or not. Like, if he has a bad day, I can't feel like it's somehow my problem or I'm the problem, where I used to always blame myself around other people's emotions or their happiness.
Yeah. And it's quite common in a relationship, but I think it's so powerful that you guys separated, got back together, and now you're like two separate people filling your own cup up. I mean, we hear that all the time. So that's very beautiful. And, kudos to you and him for that courage.
Thank you. I feel like it's just a huge blessing. So thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the last question. This is my little signature question that I like to ask all my guests. What is a token of truth that you can offer someone who's maybe just beginning their journey of self-awareness and wanting to discover new things? What could help guide them along the way to discovering their medicine of truth?
Well, and I actually said this already once, but it's because I think it's so relevant in so many ways. I guess first I want to say that there's no wrong way, in my opinion, to find, your truth, to bring awareness to yourself and to your path. But when you don't know where to start, I feel like begin with your breath, literally. I mean, because it is free, it is practical. It's practical to do too. You can do it anywhere, right? It really is so powerful because we walk around, and I say we, just as a society, and myself included, some days I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not even like really breathing right now. Normally I'm breathing in my chest or my shoulders, my neck, and I'm not breathing into my belly and to my tummy and really letting it all go and just, Buddha belly breathing. Like that alone can be so healing to your body. It brings your body a level of safety by you allowing that breath to really fully come from, in through the mouth or the nose, all the way down through the chest into the stomach, and just letting it all fill your body with breath and life, because that is your life force. And prana, that we talk about in some cultures, and in yoga, they speak of prana. But it brings awareness, it brings the healing energy again. It brings that sense of presence to the moment that you're in, so that you stop living in that past where you're depressed about what happened, or you're guilty feeling of whatever's going on in your head. And it gets you out of your head for the anxiety that you might be feeling of what's going to happen next, or what could happen, or what if. So the breath, literally, like I said, it's free. I definitely have used other tools like, reading or mentorship, or just spirituality in general, things that are part of that, realm. But the breath is non-denominational. It's no dogma around where you study, how you study it, how you use it. And I think it's really something that people forget is one of the foundational tools that we have for healing. So that will bring you into a level of awareness, and it can expand overnight. And it might be a little bit more of a journey you have to practice, you have to commit to. Yeah. So that's definitely top of mind for me.
Beautiful. Yeah, the deeper you breathe, the deeper you are. So breathe if you don't breathe.
Yes, please.
All right. And if people are wanting to know where they can find you, where can they find you?
The best way to get in touch with me right now is probably through Instagram, at the Jillian Warwick. My full name, but the in front of it. Someone took Jillian Warwick. I don't know. So that's what I'm using right now. I'm actually kind of revamping my whole website and everything, because I didn't feel in line with the way it presented for me anymore. I used to use a different name. So but for now, I'm, very easily accessible through Instagram. That's pretty much the main platform I'm on. If it comes to social media. So that would be really the easiest way. And people, it's easy to message you someone there. I'm not blocking anyone. So.
Awesome. All right, you guys, that is Jillian. And if you like this episode, please share it, because you never know whose life this could change. And until next time, have a wonderful week.